and put that in the chat. Would be great. We're going to go ahead and get started with our time together. I want to be respectful of everybody's schedules. We had a small group register. I think it was less than 20 folks decided to be a part of the conversation. I think some people, I had one person email, had some conflict come up at the last minute, but whoever's able to join us, when they're able to join us, we're grateful for those folks to be a part of the conversation, continuing the conversation with our tribal communities, because it is you all who are helping us understand the needs of specific tribal areas, urban and rural. And so we want to say thank you for taking the time to spend with us. We'll go ahead and get started with a few slides and then begin our time sharing some of our ideas, our needs, and other things that are very specific to our tribal communities. Please let me know if y'all can see the screen, or if you can't see the screen. However, everybody able to see that okay? Cam, thumbs up. Thank you. I only see one familiar face on the screen from our last event together, but I want to say thank you and welcome to joining us with a continuation of conversations on tribal partnerships for success. I'm Dr. Allison Bays, and I serve in the National American Indian Alaska Native Prevention Technology Transfer Center. I come from South Texas area with the Tapilam Coetecan Nation. It's a pleasure to have one of my colleagues online with us today. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Dr. Liskov.
Hi, my name is Maureen Lileskov, and I'm a consultant for the National American Indian Center. Nice to be here.
In addition to that, we do have one of our communication team's members on the line with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Cam Marcingill. As Allison just said, I'm with the communications team as well as work with the PTTC. So, yeah.
So Cam will be handling any of our technology issues if we have them. I don't think we will, but they'll be ready to help us and support. It's really important that we know that this project has been sponsored over the last year or so during our grant year for Partnerships for Success through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. And the content of the event is a creation of us, our team at the National American Indian Alaska Native PTTC, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native PTTC, but we know that it's important that when we gather together, that we pay honor and tribute to the land from which we come from. As I mentioned, I'm from South Texas, and we have wonderful ancestors that we have learned from over the years. But we also know that the University of Iowa, where we are housed, actually sits on and near the Meskwaki settlement. So I'd like to invite you to take time to acknowledge the land and pay respect to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken over and inhabited, past and present. We want to honor the land itself and the people who have stewarded it through the generations. Please take a few moments to read the last few paragraphs. This land acknowledgement was created by 3 of our colleagues, Ella Driscoll, Keely Driscoll, and Sean Bear, all from the Meskwaki Nation. I'd like to invite us all just to take a few moments of quiet reflection. Think about where we have come throughout the day, from the time we woke up to the point which brings us here together today, this afternoon, for most of us. Quietly think and reflect and pray for one another and for our tribal communities. Creator, we ask for your guidance your intercession. We ask for words of wisdom. We ask for a truthful reflection of what our tribes need so we can continue to serve each and every person better to the best of our abilities. We ask that you be with us as we engage in conversation and express how we can continue to move forward in a healthy and holistic way. And this we pray. As we look at this map, this kind of gives you a visual of who we are, where we come from. If you look at all the small little circles all around the states, there are 10 regional offices that work with specific state communities. They also have the advantage that they can work directly with tribal communities within that region, within that small area. We happen to be one of 2 national offices that get to serve all of the tribal communities in all of these regions, including Alaska. And it's a wonderful honor that we have this opportunity to listen to people from, like I said, Alaska all the way through the states down to Florida, Maine, and everywhere in between. It's an opportunity for us to learn about what the specific needs are and what some of the national needs are. And I'm going to speak to that in just a few moments as we delve into a reflection of what we learned from our last conversation. For today's event, you will receive a follow-up email, which is going to include the slide deck and the recording of our time together. And then you'll also receive a link to the GIPRA, which is a post-event evaluation survey. And what this does in an anonymous way, you get to share your thoughts, your reflections, tell us what we do well, tell us what we need to improve upon, so that when we continue to host these events and using this platform to bring the TA grantees and the Partnerships for Success together, you get to tell us how we can improve upon this. And it's really important for our funders, which is SAMHSA, to understand that as well. So I invite you after the event today to take some time. I will post the link in the chat. I think I've already done it once, but I'll continue to do so. You can help us answer your questions. They cannot be traced back to you, and help us do better with our team. I'm going to stop sharing for just a few moments to see how many folks are actually on. As I mentioned earlier, I know that one of you as a participant was on the first session that we had, and I believe it was Angela. Am I mistaken? Tara or Greg, were y'all in our last conversation?
No, this is my first one.
Mine as well.
Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you for being here. It's really important that we do a quick review of what we discussed the last time, but really try and figure out where we're going from today's conversation. Our center had an opportunity prior to my time actually coming on board, and this is where Dr. Liliskoff comes in, to really talk about the important work that she did with my predecessor and other team members across the country with PFS grantees. And so what we did is we met with everybody to talk about what were the results from that, but then we followed up during another gathering to talk about where we're going forward. So today we thought that we would address a few things with you all. I can get my mouse to work with me. You can see there's only 3 things that we'd like to review and discuss with you today. Continue to host a platform like this session for all the Tribal PFS grantees so that you can actually engage with one another and support one another in the work that you do. Engage and support you all. That would be our role, our responsibility, to understand what your needs are and how we can help you with technical assistance, product development, and other needs that your tribal community may have, and provide an opportunity for collaboration.
I still don't think it's appropriate for you guys to be doing this. It's really.
I think there's a microphone that might want to be muted.
Do you understand that?
You can check your microphones. Thank you. As I shared, the last time we met, it was really important. And I don't know if I can turn the floor over to you, Dr. Liliskoff, to talk about what the initial project was.
Hi, everyone. Hi again. So this project was funded by SAMHSA, and what SAMHSA wanted to do was to find out what the needs were or what challenges or strengths the PFS grantees had. And their main goal was to eventually, not now, but in the future, change how the grant process is done or how the RFP is written. And so we had surveys done and community forum done with state, tribal, and community grantees. I might need to go back to the data, but anyway, some of the things that we found in that, so I can just, I don't want to report on the whole project, but I think some of the stuff that came out of our conversations with the tribes, aside from they wanted more funding, but also some of the data collection methods were not work, but not so well for tribes. There was issues with connecting with GPOs. But the other thing that came out was some of the PFS grantees, our tribal communities, wanted a forum to communicate and connect with the other grantees. And so I think that's where this came out of, but also just a feedback loop back to the feds. And so hopefully this gathering can help grantees not just connect with each other, but also work with the center to identify some of struggles they may have or successes they have that they can share with each other, and that we can report back to the feds to improve the PFS process or grant process for tribal grantees. Did that almost cover it, Lisa?
Yes, I think you did.
All right.
It's really important to know that we have a team who continues to work with our tribal grantees, although we are not the ones who grant the funds to your organizations. We support the work that you all do and want to continue to know that we can collaborate with you all for future endeavors, technical assistance, webinars, hosting meetings such as this, product development, other needs that you may have that we may not know otherwise unless we hear this from you all. And so when we met the last time, we learned a few things, and I'll share some specifics with you all. Angela, you might remember some of the conversation, but what we learned is that the tribal grantees shared their experiences with us, that they wanted to see improvements to program requirements and parameters. For example, because of how the funds are dispersed to the tribal communities, it limits the way in we're able to, you're able to provide refreshments to the participants, to people who come to be involved and engaged with your meetings. And so what we learned is that some grantees feel that they're very restricted in how they can utilize the money. Just to provide, like I said, light refreshments when they gather together with the people in need. That was the first thing we learned. The other thing that stood out to us is that, again, the grantees shared their experiences with their communities, with each other, that they felt in many instances they were being treated like all other American and Alaska Native communities. And we all know, those of us who are here and those who aren't present with us, that there are over 500 federally recognized tribes. And that doesn't even include the state recognized for those who aren't in that little box of having their own sovereignty and having their own guidelines and having their own voice in many ways. So with the hundreds and hundreds of tribal communities we have, we know that no two are alike. We know that each one has their own way in which they operate in their communities. We know we have urban, we have rural. We know that there are large tribal communities and there are small tribal communities, all of whom have their own indigenous knowledge, indigenous ways of knowing, and tribal traditions. And so these were the two things that stood out to us that was shared by those of you who participated in the last one. And so what we'd like to do is to continue to support you all in the conversation with one another, but also engage with the staff at the federal level. And we did extend the invitation to our federal representative to be here, who is engaged with the Partnerships for Success nationally. And that person was unavailable today. There was a conflict. So they are hoping to be a part of the conversation in the near future. And I'm going to give you a little task at the very end of today so that we'll resume in a few weeks. That person can have an opportunity to be prepared to share some thoughts on your concerns. What this meant for us at the Native Center for Behavioral Health through the prevention office is that we wanted to make sure that we let you know that we heard your concerns and we intend to help you move forward with some guidance and some support. We heard that you would like to have more hands-on guidance for reporting and understanding the guidelines. So I did share this with our national representative so they can be prepared to talk about how they can do that with all the grantees in the near future. And we also agreed that we'd like to meet more often and to provide a platform, a forum, a safe space for you all to come together and process and support each other. And that we would help you in that by providing this opportunity for a conversation. And it really essentially gives you the platform or the opportunity to network with one another, to talk about what is working really well, what are your successes with your programs, and what are some other needs that have areas of improvement that need to be addressed. And again, we would like to help you to gather together, to process and address some of those things. Dr. Liliskoff, do you have anything you'd like to add? I didn't hear a response, but that's okay.
Sorry, no, I don't. I was muted.
That's okay. Thank you. And Blake, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to post where you're coming from, Blake, I see Tribal Youth Connections as your image there on the screen, but in the chat, you're welcome. And Greg, you as well, if you haven't done so, who you are, where you're coming from. And this is a good time for you since we have such a small group. And I see Julia's joined us as well from California. You're welcome to post it in the chat, as well as share a little bit about who you are and what you do. But you'd have to unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Yeah, I can share. So I am from a small tribe in Northern California, Ram Valley Indian tribes, and we have a PFS project called Path to Wellness. And of course, it focuses on underage prevention of underage drinking. So we are in our third year and we are moving into implementation. We're doing a lot of cultural events, planning to do a series of cultural events. We really believe that culture is prevention. We've done a lot of work in our community just to find out what that means, what people would like to see. So the feedback that we've got is we want to have our youth connected to our traditions and our ceremonies, and we want to have that in our schools and in our program. So that's kind of me briefly. Oh, I should have said I'm a Wailaki from the Wailaki tribe from Ram Valley Indian tribes.
Thank you, Julia. Who'd like to be next? Can I invite Tara?
Hi, everyone. Oh, hold on one second. Let me close my blinds. The sun is right in my eyes and on the computer. Okay. sun is just rising here in Anchorage. It is 10:30 a.m. So it's pretty dark here already. It's the winter. So I'm Tara Asmer. I'm the grants coordinator for Cook Inlet Tribal Council. We support tribes in the Seri region, which would be Eklutna, Chicaloon, Kanik, Knitsi, and a few other ones. Those are our main tribal partnerships that we work with. I am fairly new to my position. I'm also supporting my manager, Courtney Carmack, who will probably be on these calls moving forward. She's on maternity leave, so I'm kind of stepping in as well for her. But I work for Recovery Services, so we support, Alaska Natives and non-Alaska Natives in their recovery journey. And specifically through the PFS grant, we work with teachers in Anchorage to help them provide a safe, supportive environment for themselves, but also their students. So we work with the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School, providing SEL curriculum. Last year, we did some research on what teachers need versus what the students need, and kind of getting those connections in order so everything's aligned and everyone's supporting each other. We work with the Center for Safe Alaskans to provide trainings and provide that cultural aspect, and we work on indigenizing curriculum for students as well. Agreed that prevention culture is prevention, so supporting that. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. The goal here is to learn and hear from everyone else and see what I can learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to Blake. See him next in the line. If you'd like to unmute yourself, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Blake Reddick. I'm the program director of PFS for the Wichita and affiliated tribes. And we are in Anadarko, Oklahoma, which is quite the hub of quite a few tribes. So we work with any and all, and we do a lot of culture classes and go into the schools and have them after hours, after school hours, and work with kind of anyone and everyone that we can get to. I think one of our biggest difficulties is the rural areas and getting everything out to everyone that needs it and making sure that they feel supported in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big task there in Oklahoma. There's a lot of great opportunities. So thank you for sharing. Next on our line, we have Greg.
Thank you. I'm Greg Donovan. I direct the Society of Care, which is part of the Santee Sioux Nation. And through that grace of that tribal leadership, work with self-identified young Native Americans throughout the state of Nebraska. On the Santee Reservation, Winnebago, and Omaha tribes, also working with the Ponca tribe, which doesn't have land in Nebraska, as well as the urban populations in Omaha and Lincoln, and the rural and frontier populations in the western part of the state, where the indigenous population tends to be members of tribes based in South Dakota. The breadth of what we do in reaching out and trying to make sure that we're true to the cultural desires and elements of each individual, each family, each community poses a unique challenge, just to make sure that we are sincere in doing so, and strongly view culture as being central to everything. And so some of the points you were making from prior conversations echoed and resonated with me as you were talking. The other thing that obviously has sort of thrown a wrench in everything has been the pandemic, that sort of the rise and fall of the ability to do things in person, abiding by state and federal and tribal limitations imposed by the pandemic, trying to do as many things as in person as possible, but also being acutely aware of individuals' comfort and their concerns for their health. And like many places, Nebraska disproportionately, the impact has hit native and tribal lands harder. So that's kind of where we are. We have been able recently to have some really successful major events, powwows and sweats and talking circles in different communities that are really promising moving ahead. And I think that we've persevered well, but it feels like we're slightly behind because we wanted to do so much more and we're held up by the pandemic. But thank you. I'm glad to be here and learn as well.
Thank you, Fred. And we also have Angela on the line with us. If you'd like to mute yourself, and then you can share with the group. Angela, are you still with us? Oh, no, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself at all? Well, that's okay. We'll put a little pause on that, and if it starts working, just jump in. What we were thinking of doing, Angela, just jump in, raise your hand, and we'll let you have your turn if your mic starts to work. What we were thinking of doing with our group, because we had, like I said, just under 20 register for today, but not everybody's been able to join us, that we were going to break into small groups, but we're such a small group. We're going to put something up on the screen, and then we can take some time to share a little bit more specifics regarding. Angela, it looked like your mic unmuted for just a moment. So before we address the question that Dr. Littlesculp is going to share, Angela, if you want to take this time to share.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear somebody.
Okay, it just may be a little bit muted. I've heard that. Thank you for allowing me to be back here. Like I mentioned in the chat, I am with the PTTC Tribe of Oklahoma, and I serve on our Native Connections grant. So this is one of SAMHSA's grants that aims towards suicide prevention and substance abuse prevention for our Native youth up to the age of 24. So I'm just happy to be here. Our program, similar to what I've heard on the chat so far, our aim is implementing culture as prevention, returning to that cultural belonging and how that can contribute to our prevention efforts. So thank you all for letting me be here.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming back. You were on us with our first conversation back in September, so we thank you for that. We are, again, hoping to hear from how we can support you all. It's really important to know that the funds that we receive are meant to help our tribal communities, both urban and rural, in your different needs. In the area of, for my specific office, prevention, but we also have a mental health office with a supplement for K through 12. We also have an addiction technology transfer center, and we have a new office, about a year old now, with trauma under a category 2 with a child stress initiative. And so you can see that we have a multitude of opportunities to partner with you, to support you in the works that you do, the programs that you offer, and to be that listening ear, if you will, to be the soundboard, to be that conduit, to help bring your concerns to different levels And we also want to make sure that we support your voice in the conversation. And that's, again, why we want to invite, and we will continue to invite someone at the national level, a representative, to be present with us during these conversations so that they can hear directly from you all. What are some of the concerns you have? You know, we express them to them, to those leaders on your behalf, but it's also important that you have that voice. And so know that this is something we want to do on a continual basis to provide this platform for you all so that you can share from your perspective. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Liliskoff to propose something for us to share out loud, discuss.
I like how Alison throws me under the bus. But anyway, it's really nice to be here. And I'm originally from Kenya, but I've worked extensively in with tribes in different regions and with the center for many, many years since I was a student. But I don't know about you all, but my experience with a lot of meetings, and I've sat through a ton of meetings with different grants, including the Native Connections, is that sometimes, you know, you have a presenter talking about stuff, but my goal or my hope is that we can use this more as a conversational platform rather than, you know, just someone presenting stuff. And so I think one of the things that I would like to hear is what are some of the challenges you've had, or maybe someone can throw out a challenge, and then hopefully the other folk can provide ways that they have dealt with that challenge, or if that is a challenge for them too, so that we can share with each other rather than just one of us speaking. And then what are some of the strengths that you have seen in your programs that the rest of us can borrow or pass on to the groups we work with? So it's gonna need someone to volunteer a challenge, something that they're struggling with right now. And then, you know, someone else to throw in what they've done. And especially those cultural pieces. I was at a different meeting and the different folks came up with really amazing things that they were doing from a cultural perspective that, you know, the other folks were like, wow, we can tweak that for our community as well. So I'll just open that up to you all. So someone to volunteer a challenge. We'll start with that one.
I'm not sure this is a challenge, but it's something we're trying to do.
Okay.
And that is in focusing on culture, capturing voices of elders and using that to then educate and support younger people. And we've done some videography, but I didn't know if other communities had been looking at that or doing similar things, because there's a lot of fear that language speakers and cultural traditions will disappear when elders do. And so I just kind of selfishly am throwing it out for self-help, as well as it's something that we're looking at trying to grow and trying to be creative in doing it in a way that's appealing to the community and to young people.
I can share a challenge. So we've had a real challenge with our leadership to have them be engaged and supportive of what our prevention efforts are. And it kind of all goes back to understanding prevention and health promotion and prevention are, you know, they have a different pace. They have a different purpose than like intervention and treatment. And that whole prevention area is, I think, not well understood by leadership. So when we get a prevention program, a lot of times they really expect, you know, us to be doing counseling with youth, and a part of it is that because we do bring those things and those resources to the community, but that's not what it's about. So I think there's a whole piece missing where we need to do that education for our leadership so that they understand like what our purpose is and the pace, the different way that prevention works in the community. Sorry, I got to sign something real quick because
Everything good? Sorry, I didn't.
yeah, because without that, a lot of times it feels like the leadership isn't on board and they're very, they question a lot of things that our staff make decisions about, they don't fully support it. And so bringing the leadership in is so important. And that's a huge challenge for us right now.
So I've had two challenges. One is the leadership, and then the other one is how do we capture the voice of elders and present that to the youth in a way that's meaningful to them. So do the other folks have they done that? Do you have ways that you reach your leaders that could benefit those two challenges that we can all adapt? I can give you an example of one in terms of capturing voices. I know one tribe that does storytelling with their youth on an online platform, and what they have done is bring those elders to do those sessions with the kids. So it's and that platform is specifically for the young kids. It's like an app. They can log in and check youth activities and have story hour, and so that's how they're retaining some of the voices of the elders within that app. That's something I've seen in one tribe. I don't know what all the other folks have done.
I can maybe add something. So something that we've incorporated within the last year has been monthly prevention activities with youth and their families, but it's in a cultural setting. So it's our prevention manager plans out months in advance, like a activity calendar, and it's on a sign up basis with our partners. It's shot out in our newsletter, like sign up for a monthly event, and the events are like seasonal. So over the summer we had salmon fishing, we had dip netting, where we actually provided like fishing poles, and like we provided everything, some snacks for the kids, transportation for the kids as well if their families weren't able to attend. We invited our leadership to come, which they were able to come, so they were there to see the connections that the kids were making and the conversations and things like that. So that is just, it's blown up. A lot of the kids are very interested in it. The families love it too. Like I have this right here, but they had a cranberry picking, and we brought the kids out to Hatcher Pass, which is this very big area where berry picking happens, and they were sharing stories and talking about their perspectives on things. It's more of like an informal way of connection with people. Our youth just seem to really connect with that, and their families. And then for elder connections, I know that there's a storytelling and drum making activity coming up, and some cultural dancing trainings and stuff like that for the kids. So just setting up like a monthly time for kids to come and talk and be with their families or their friends, or just our prevention team. We have our peer support specialist come, our director comes, things like that. So it's been pretty successful. I don't know if that would be helpful or not to others, but I'd be happy to send out some information if it would be helpful to others. So thanks.
Thank you, Greg and Julia, for sharing some of the concerns or the needs that your communities have. And Tara for sharing a potential response could help. I know Dr. Lilliskov has her experience there where she resides in South Dakota and other areas that she served. So it's important to see what is working in different communities. We might need to tweak it a little bit for our own specific community, and that's okay. Find what works for us so that we can grow our indigenous ways of knowing our culture as prevention, as Tara has said, how we can continue to keep our language, our traditions alive. So these are some good suggestions. Blake, I saw you unmute a few moments ago. Did you have something to share?
I was just going to say, not specific to this grant, but some of the things that we're doing for language wise that I'd like to incorporate would be one of our tribes has connects with the University of Oklahoma, and they have an archive there of tapes and recordings of some of the languages of different dialects within that language. And they try to bring that into all their culture classes and shawl making and all those different things to, give them a word that means shawl or things like that. I really like the idea of videoing into, because sometimes, especially if you have hearing impaired people, it's better to see those, the mouth working the way it needs to and things like that. So I do like that idea. And then as far as leadership, I'm kind of exactly what Tara says, we kind of invite them to all of our things too. So any opportunities that we have or any of our mental health bashes or anything like that, we try to bring our leadership and have them do an opening or a closing or something like that for the kids to see that, and parents and all the generations. I think it's pretty helpful.
Thank you for sharing. If I could just address a couple of things that some of you shared, and Tara, if someone does want to hear what you have, they would love to see your resources. I think it was Blake who put it in the chat. So if you want to exchange emails in the chat, you're welcome to. Again, this is being recorded. We'll send out resources to everybody. But Greg, I know the challenge that it can be to pass on traditional language. With my own community back home, we have language classes, and those just started pre-pandemic, maybe about 7 years ago. And it's a traditional classroom setting, and it's a challenge for everybody, young and old, when it has not been a language that's been practiced for many, many years. And so one of the things I shared with my community that I experienced up in Saley, Arizona, when I used to teach for a tribal college there with the Navajo Nation, we did a summer program for language, and I took the traditional Navajo language class again in a classroom setting, and it was a good experience. But where I learned easiest, best was by doing things. And so in the summer, what the tribal college did is that they paired up elderly with young people, and it wasn't so much them telling stories, it was just doing activities together, from sheep herding to wood chopping to anything that you would normally do in your daily routine. Weaving and other things, doing peshlikai work, which is silversmithing. And the conversation would all be in Navajo. So it wasn't really storytelling per se. It was just talking about the importance of learning to be a sheep herder. And then they would go on their way, walking for an hour or two and just talking only in Navajo. And it was a challenge, but they were able to grasp the language when you hear it over and over and over. And they were put in the form of a summer camp. So it's sometimes, I think Blake said, it's sometimes just not necessarily reading or hearing everything, but sometimes just being tactile and doing the activities is a good way that we can process and learn. If you think about all the different ways we learn, some of us can read and we get it. Some of us have to do and understand it better. So Greg, I want to continue that conversation with you later on because over the winter, our office is going to sponsor some events for how do we be a good relative? How are we good relatives with one another during the winter months, and providing healthy, safe activities to engage families of all ages, intergenerational, to carry on our traditions and our culture, our language, our songs, our games, our traditional foods, and the list goes on. So I want to invite you to think about how you might want to be a part of that conversation. And Tara, great experience, great knowledge that you're sharing there. My experience up in Nome was that the elders were the ones who went into the preschools and read stories to the children, and all in native language. And so it was a good experience. So rather than hear a westernized version of a story, they could hear a Nupiaq or a different, dialect of a story being told to the children in their classroom setting. So these are some good ideas that y'all are sharing. Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to thank you. I think that the idea of being a good relative is something that we focus on a lot, and have noticed that, especially among young people, even in reservation communities who may not be strongly connected to their culture, that when we talk about culture, we even have to slow down, because it's person to person, household to household, family to family. It's not like, oh, this community feels this way or that way. And so the whole idea of being a good relative, sometimes starting at the beginning with respected elders or with others, is really valuable. And kind of like you were talking about with the language immersion, we did something similar trying to do workforce development with a series of experiences and exposures using some native practitioners to expose young people, middle school and high school aged, to behavioral health careers and the various things, but interspersing culture with that as well. So yeah, the idea of immersion is really appealing to us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Angela, I see that you're going to hop off. Make sure that you take time after today to respond to our survey. It's very helpful. I'm going to post it again in the chat. At the very first area of the chat. We look forward to hearing from you with our next event, and chances are it'll be on January. We're looking at January 10th for our next event, Angela and everybody else. If you want to pencil that in on your calendar, you'll get an invite from us again to resume our conversations.
I was gonna share another thing we did with in terms of getting leadership involved. In one tribe, we came up with what we called an I Make a Difference campaign. And what that was, I know SAMHSA doesn't allow you grantees to do t-shirts or mugs or any of that stuff anymore. But the youth created mugs that said, I make a difference on here. And then on the back of it, they wrote why they made a difference in the community. And we had some youth that wrote that in their language. And so the whole goal was the youth would get the mug, the parent would get the mug, but tribal council members would get those mugs as well, just as a reminder of the kids in their communities that need that prevention, that need that support for the youth. So, and that was an awesome campaign. It was one of my favorite ones.
I love that. That's amazing.
And we know that each of you taking the time to process within one another and share your needs and share your stories is an important way to recognize that each of you make a difference also. You're taking time out of your schedules to be part of a conversation on a larger scale, and not so much with your individual communities, but with a larger tribal community, so that we can see how we can help each other continue to be successful, continue to rise against the challenges that we might be faced with, and learn how to do something to help our communities in a slightly different way than what we're used to. Are there any other
And maybe
comments?
doing a campaign and I make a difference with your tribal leadership, saying what difference they make, and then giving them that back would be another way to get them engaged, because then they would, look at that every day.
In the chat box, Tara, did you want to share something?
Yep, a thought just popped into my head for leadership involvement too. Something that we saw really resonated with them, with specifically our prevention programs, with these cultural events and things like that. We had an evaluator, an external evaluator, evaluate the program and did focus groups with youth and our staff to ask them, like, what's your, what do you like to do? Like, what do you like about this activity? What could be better? What are some takeaways you've had? Things like that had actual quotes from the youth taking classes and coming to our events and are involved in our services in general. And we were able to present that not only to SAMHSA funding agency, but also our leadership. And they were really able to see like the connections that these children are making and the impact that this has on the community and things like that. So I also noticed that our leadership was very excited to see that. I don't know if that's an option for others, but that was really what was able for us to create this as a monthly event, not just as a one-time, oh, it worked, it was fun. Something that actually made an impact in the community. So thanks.
I like that we're sharing some good ideas to help our people, no matter whether you're north, south, east, or west. We all have similar struggles, and sometimes solutions that work with one community may work in another. Again, tweak it to what makes sense for you and your people. It's really important to look at options because we all want to have healthier, holistic communities. And sometimes it's doing things a little bit different, thinking outside the box. In the chat, what I decided to ask you to share about with our team, not necessarily right in this moment, I would like you to think about it for some time, but between now and the next time we meet, to share about ways that you would need us to partner with you and to address your tribal community's needs. Whatever, big or small, developing products, presenting expert content area in a webinar, or to help you host a meeting. We would like to be that support system for you all. And so I would like to share my screen again, if I may, and give you some last bit of information. Looking ahead, whoops. We want you to think about, these are the 4 questions that we asked our grantees at our previous session that I would like us to consistently be mindful of in regard to what is your experience in like being a grantee in the PFS? What else would you like to see come out of that grant opportunity? What are some of the challenges that you have? And what kind of assistance would you need to help move you forward? And in regard to question number 4, and I think all of them, but number 4 in particular, I want you to know that what I put in the chat is an open invitation for you to email our team, reach out to our staff, to ask us for guidance, ask us for some help in some of the things you may be needing with your tribal communities. If you go to our website, which I'm going to post here on the screen for you, the PTTC network, and then you notice we're the National American Indian Alaska Native PTTC. This website will take you to our landing page, and you can find a multitude of resources of previous things that we have done, whether they're online YouTube recordings of previous sessions with bullying prevention, LGBTQ2S ideas and concepts, focusing on tobacco prevention, all kinds of things. We've done them all. This is for our very specific office with the Prevention Technology Transfer Center. But as I shared with you at the beginning of our time together, we have other offices that can address other specific needs in regard to addiction, in regard to trauma stress initiatives with children, and their families in regard to mental health and wellness for adults, as well as our K through 12 population. So just because I put our specific website out in the area of prevention doesn't limit you as to who you could reach out to. We have a whole group of folks that we partner with at the University of Iowa Native Center for Behavioral Health. It's under the directorship of Dr. Anna Helena Skinstad. And then Dr. Lilliskulf, who's been with us today on the session, has been with the PFS program since its beginning prior to my coming aboard. So you're always welcome to reach out to our team to ask for more guidance or help. If you cannot find an answer to a question quick enough, send us a quick email and we'll do our best to help match you up with someone who can provide the best answer for you and your community. Any last thoughts, Dr. Lilliskulf?
No, if there's anyone needing that has questions with the campaign and what we did, yeah, feel free to email or reach out. And thank you all for being here. It was really awesome.
Thank you all. We want to be respectful of your time. We're just at the top of the hour. Are there any last thoughts or comments or questions before we say goodbye until we see each other again on January 10th? Well, today begins Indigenous Heritage Month. If you haven't used Google yet for today, this is my little plug for the day, and Google does not pay me to say this, but every day when you click on that little Google name at the top, it's kind of written interesting every time, every day that you log in. Today they talk about the stickball game. So if you hit that link, it'll take you to something fun and encouraging, because it's important to honor our ancestors, honor our culture, and honor each other as we move forward in a good way and be good relatives to one another. It's so important. And the work that you're doing up there, Tara, we appreciate you getting up to be with us in the morning. And for those of us who are late in the day somewhere else, yes, Blake, I'll add you to the email list. Yes. Anybody else who wants to share anything in the chat, I'll stay on for another 2 minutes or so. You're welcome to put anything in the chat that you think is important for us to know, so I can share that with our director and Dr. Lilliskulf. I want to say thank you. Nalit Sam, Miigwech. Thank you. Cam, before we log off, you save the chat? Can you save the chat? Oh, the chat.